tool in Arabic, in Islamic perspective. So taking all of these things into consideration, the market grew very much, and it reached around 113 billion USD for bitcoins. This issued a lot of hand wringing and amongst the central banks. They started debating if it is a commodity, an asset, or a form of currency, what actually bitcoins are. Then there is an open question to the Islamic finance industry. The current practice of issuing currency is centrally controlled, and distributed systems using mathematics and cryptography to guarantee integrity is a better option. Which of these two should they go for? Should they go for decentralized system, or should they go for a centralized approach that is currently into practice? It is understood that in future there will be a mix of the two. Now, this is something about speaking about Bitcoin volatility. We notice that Bitcoin is 3.3% volatile by 30th of June 2018, which is very high volatility as compared to gold, which is approximately 0.59, and major currencies are between 0.5 to 1. So Bitcoin is volatile 3 times more. Thus, such volatilities are characteristics of assets and not of currencies. Then again, government treasuries are usually responsible for issuing currencies. For example, if you have gold, you can have a large pool of gold, but then again, you cannot really issue your own currency. You have to go to the central bank to have it minted and then issue a currency against it. What happens in the case of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is an individual can launch his or her own currency without a proper backup. So these are the risks. Thus, we can safely consider Bitcoin as a virtual asset. There is nothing solid behind it. Now, this is something about, we talk about assessment of Bitcoin from Islamic perspective. For anything to be counted as a currency, it should fulfill 3 key characters. It should be a basis to evaluate goods and services. It should be issued by a central authority which takes responsibility of the currency, and it should be widely available. Anybody and everybody should have access to it. But unfortunately, in the case of Bitcoin, we see that it is not a basis of evaluation. It is available to only a few individuals. It is not really open for everybody. And the issuing body is unknown. So taking all of these things into consideration, we notice that there is a component of Gharar and Hasa in this. Thus it was made impermissible to deal in Bitcoin in the GCC region. Now, we again look forward. I have tried to compare Bitcoin versus gold, and this is what we identified, that since it is not backed by anything solid like whether grains or gold or silver, or there was nothing material behind the Bitcoins. Thus we can infer from Islamic perspective that it does not fall in the category of mal, that is property. Again, we look at the intrinsic value of gold, we see that it goes far beyond jewelry. It has an industrial value. So in the case of Bitcoin, other than trading, there is no real, they are basically numbers. There is no real value behind it. Immaterial of whatever technology is applied behind. The approach per se needs to be revisited. Bitcoin has no such value and price could rise and fall. We have seen that it is 3 times more volatile than regular currency. Now, our observations from this is that Bitcoin falls to be considered in the realm of assets. They are ideally virtual assets. Bitcoin does not fulfill the condition that Islam lays down for currencies and assets. As a currency, it fails to meet the requirements. It's not a stable store of value. It cannot be benchmarked for wages and salaries, and it is not issued by a central authority. It fails as an asset and is not free from gharar. That is basically gharar and mayasir, uncertainty and betting. Bitcoin is a virtual asset, and real investment opportunity lies not in Bitcoin, but in the technology behind, that is blockchain. this is the summary where we are talking that yes, in terms of Bitcoin, we can always have it, but it needs to be designed properly. There are cases where central banks are taking initiatives. They are coming up with a central bank issued uh, tokens or cryptocurrencies. They are called CDBCs. So that is something which has a backup. The government is going to back it up. There is a value behind. There is a solid authority behind taking responsibility of the value of that currency. Yeah, sure.
I didn't get why it has to be backed by entity for it to be.
Yes. The idea is behind one of the core principles, one of the core factors for issuing a currency from the Islamic perspective is that it should be issued by a known body. Okay. Now, in the case of bitcoins or cryptocurrencies, individuals are not known. You may know a miner, but the whole community of miners is unknown. It's practically not possible to know each one of those. Then again, the person who is issuing it, for example, I am an individual, I issue a currency today, and I'm running it properly. Tomorrow, if I find something else more interesting, I can switch off the server and leave. That's the end of the game.
Is that why non-proof of work coins like XRP, Cardano, EOS, is that why? Well, certainly I heard that the XRP coin was Sharia compliant. Recent conference in
Are coming
Dubai,
up
is
with
that
those.
correct?
Yeah, they are coming up with those. Like one, we were discussing one of the cases where they are trying to issue tokens against oil. Eric was speaking about it. They're working on it, right? So they have some asset behind. They have something behind the currency which is going to back it up.
But the XRP token doesn't have anything behind it, and that's Sharia compliant. So
I have not really read about XOP in detail. If you give me some time, I can get back to you on that. I did research in detail, particularly on Bitcoin, because it is one of the most popular cryptocurrencies.
there was a big conference in Dubai, and they announced it.
You know how difficult it is to go to Dubai these days.
Watch it on the internet.
I will for sure, because the whole thing is focused around. If you look at the value, you will find that majority of the value is against Bitcoins till date. It is one of the most popular Bitcoins, and while studying, we decided to pick up the most popular because there are categories. There are a lot of those. Some of those are being issued, which they claim to be Sharia compliant. Some of them they are not. So there's a lot of debate on. But to conduct or to proceed with our study, we decided to take Bitcoin particularly as an example, since it was the most popular.
It's kind of considered that all the technology now is slow, it's expensive, it's unsustainable, the amount of electricity it uses.
Yes, very true.
I mean, on a mass, mass scale, it's completely unsustainable.
There are, and at the end, you spend a lot of electricity, you spend a lot of energy, you spend a lot of effort, but you really do not generate anything, which could be an asset.
To buy a cup of coffee, I think it was $20.
They are just numbers.
Just in mining fees.
They're electronic numbers.
Yeah.
Yes. Like if you start mining gold, at the end you get raw gold. If you are digging for oil, you do get crude oil. But in the case of Bitcoin, you can get it.
Your 3% volatility is interesting as well, because it went 20,000 last year down to what, 3,000 now.
Yes. The thing is that data was registered then. If you look at the date tag,
30-day average.
yeah. I've taken 30-day average of this.
But I have a question. I'm not really following the fatwas. I've heard only 1%
I'm sorry? It's not Sharia compliant.
Yeah.
Yes, there are reasons to it. I'll address that question.
But is there any entity who said it's not Sharia?
Yes, there are several of those. I can share the fatwas with you. And the reason why the GCC governments, particularly, you will see that they are not appreciating, they are discouraging trading in these currencies. Yes.
But the circular from UCB is against banks trading with
True.
specifically with
The thing is, because there can be certain coins which can be issued against an asset in future, okay? But for in the case of Bitcoin, what happens is, first of all, you need to consider two aspects. I think I'm reading out my future slides now. So what happens is, let me address your question. The thing is, what happens is, we are talking about, uh, let's say for in the case of, there are certain entities in Qatar who own some Bitcoins, okay? Now, how can you control somebody who is unknown? The issuer of Bitcoin is not known, right? The miners, those who are working on it, they are not really known. And it's an online system,
The issue with the miners or the person who issued the currency?
including the person who issued the currency.
Because in the case of Ethereum, the situation is the people who issued the miners are.
For sure. Bitcoin is one of the early cases. So it came up, and then again, humanity had its own learning, and now they are trying to cover the defects.
How do you feel about claiming or being, has strong support for being the libertarian movement and decentralized, when in effect 60% is owned by 4 mining groups in China who have
Yes.
control of 60% of the coins? So
Yes.
how does that? It's kind of irony, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. Most of them, they are owned by those guys there, and particularly they cannot be named. That's another issue. Another,
The mining groups, 60%
yes,
of the coins.
they are based in China. They are consuming huge amount of electricity. That is why there is a drive, and you will see that most of the central government, they are planning to come up with CDBC, that is central bank issued digital currencies.
The IMF recently were pushing it because the developers
Yes,
massively behind Ripple and other
Yes, they will.
entities like that. So
they will. This is how.
she's been very public.
This is what we understand. This is what even I conclude, that this is the way forward. It's going to be a mix of the two. There will be. You cannot really rule out normal currency. You have to have them, and in parallel, you also have to have digital currency.
Do you see the future of money, Bank of England, conference televised?
Yes.
You didn't need to travel to England to see that either. But they were saying that banks are going to be holding crypto in 2019 on their balance sheets.
They will. The thing is that cryptocurrency, now are we referring to currencies like Bitcoin?
Cryptocurrencies.
Okay,
in general, is
or
that-
cryptocurrencies can be backed by assets like CDBCs.
No, talking about holding them on their balance sheets.
They have to see. The thing is that if you see the value, it is more than 113 billion US dollars. So they have to make a move in order to control it, to make them accountable, and then slowly and gradually make a strategic move to control them. Right now, what happens is, if you go to many of the European countries, you will see the national accounts. There is something called, they refer to it. Sorry, is there anything specific? It's funny. What they do is they call it informal economy. Okay, informal national economy, and there are several things that get into it. They are not really defined in the formal. You won't find them particularly in Qatar. The idea behind is, unless you measure those informal components of the economy, you cannot really control them. How would you manage them? You have to measure it and then manage it. So I think this is one of the major reasons. First you measure it and then you manage it. This is the direction that they are taking. So let me just rush through now. In terms of GCC perspective, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, they have, central bank has two options. Either they come up with very stricter regimes to ensure that cryptocurrency transactions are not related to darknet activities, terrorism financing, or money laundering. Or the central bank may come up with central bank issued digital currencies. There is a possibility that, now this has happened in the past during Franklin Roosevelt, when he declared holding gold by individual was not legal. So they had to come back and deposit it. Today, central bank can do the same. That if they declare Bitcoin or such currencies as illegal, they have to go back and deposit it. They will just vanish. It is up to central bank basically to carve out or to show the future of cryptocurrencies right now. Sorry?
How would central bank
The thing is that if you have currency, and if you're not allowed to use it, if you're not able to use it, it becomes invalid. The same thing happened because this is what we are talking about, because there's a move across the central banks. And I'm not talking only about Qatar. It's mainly happening in many of the countries. They are thinking about CDBCs.
Like there's one country I can think of. I don't want to say their name publicly. It's probably some, but they've just switched over to a currency as well as I know I can say Venezuela quite happily here. That's another one.
Yes. There are political reasons. You know the inflation there.
They're trying to sidestep SWIFT, aren't they? Because of the controls, the geopolitical controls over there.
True.
Sanctions, right? So
yes.
I've heard in the GCC is the biggest supporter of moving away from the petrodollar because of the controls that there are.
See, there are political reasons behind. Let's put it this way that we can discuss it offline. But the idea is that if you have to have a currency, the bottom line is you have to have an asset backing it. Otherwise, it's not valid. There is only one currency which does not have asset behind. You know the currency, right? And it's accepted because it is backed by the government of America.
That's backed by government or central bank
yes.
or the IMF, for example.
Yes.
It could be considered a currency.
Yes.
So
it makes sense, but I don't want to.
Okay. Well, the thing is that individual taking responsibility versus a government taking responsibility, these are two separate entities. If you look at the notes, they say that it has the liability to issue this much of
right?
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
Sure, please.
Are there any splits on the jurisprudence where some people say yes, it's acceptable because of
Yes, there are. There is one school who is very much who is promoting cryptocurrencies, and the reason behind it is they are taking a bit of a different approach, but they do talk about cryptocurrencies backed by assets.
One thing you mentioned is like risk-free, and also you said that because it's unknown, we cannot control. So if we talk about people, even we cannot control them. Like we cannot control the US government.
Yes, true.
They can make it zero value or whatever it like is not. And also
Yeah.
still there is a risk. There is nothing called risk-free.
True, but if you look at the risk of an individual diluting his currency versus a government diluting their currency, you would understand there is a humongous difference, right?
Not free.
Thank you. Well, we come to fintech and its scope. Now, fintech is something which is Islamic fintech can be dealt in detail, and the scope can be very, very focused. As we understand today, we are talking about fintech against Islamic currencies, right? But the scope of fintech, Islamic fintech, is pretty broad. It includes digital delivery of Islamic finance using fintech utilities. It also includes fintech in a Muslim demography. And the third is that the Sharia compliant fintech fund investing in development of a digital infrastructure is also considered as Islamic fintech. So if you look at these three aspects, the scope of Islamic fintech is pretty wide, and the market is huge. They are largely categorized into 9 segments here: crowdfunding, banking, payments, remittances, and forex. And the last one is certainly data and analytics. And this is something where I will come, since I am representing Foresight Research in data and analytics. Of course, Islamic fintech is spread globally. This is not focused only in the GCC region or the regions which has Muslim dominant population. Some of the regions which are very much upcoming are UK, you'll see this, and the US. They have good number of Islamic fintech providers. Now, thing is that there is a demand for Islamic currency. Let's say that there is a demand for Islamic solutions, financial solutions. It's very huge because the thing is that the risk is low. It's more ethical. There are two terminologies which are being used right now in the industry. One is the Islamic finance, and another one is the ethical finance, right? But if you go to the core of these two, you will find that they are nearly the same. There's not much of difference. Thus we see that, and in this you will notice that Malaysia is home to the largest number of Islamic fintech providers. They are doing it, they are laying down the ecosystem. The second thing is that market has awareness of Islamic products, so that is why their penetration is pretty easy. And then they are also, the community in this market comprises of they comprise of mix of startups. They are having a crowdfunding, they are looking into alternative payment category, personal finance, Islamic banking software providers. Then we have, of course, we have Malaysia, UAE, Indonesia, Bahrain, and UK. These are some of the leading countries who is literally, they're investing a lot in this segment of Islamic fintech. If we look at this, we will notice that majority of the investments or the majority of the players in this segment belong to the crowdfunding because it's more about raising money, right? Then it comes banking software, remittances, alternative, and you see that data and analytics, there is only one provider. Can you make any guesses for that? Like why do we have only one provider in data and analytics? Now that's something core about me, and I can hypothesize. Let me see how many of you think that. Why is it that we have only one provider here? And certainly not me. The thing is that once you have the platform and you have the information at place, that is where you start deploying analytics. Like for example, the industry earlier went into deploying ERP, they had minor reporting. But as the system matures, higher level of information or let's say advanced level of analysis is needed to take decision. That is why I'm really looking forward to all of these guys to deploy their blockchains so that I can go and sit on top of them and provide the analytical services. Now there are a lot of initiatives around. These are some of them which are pretty popular. You may have heard about Ovamba, Yielders and Wahid. I know I've spoken a lot of this material during my discussion. So there are a lot of opportunities in Islamic fintech. This technology, it's something like it's on the front. It's sitting on top of the normal system of the banking softwares. What happens is banking softwares, they are not very fast, or let's say the bank is not very fast in responding to the customer requirements. And they are also very, very limited in terms of their access to, let's say, the regional play. They are limited. Like say, for example, Qatar National Bank is largely catering to the market in Qatar. Now what these fintech providers are doing they are largely, it's a layer on top of their interface, and they are pulling up solutions from various banks. And their customers are not located, they are not limited to a region. They can reach global customers. So this is how they are doing it. And it's something which is inevitable, this will happen. This is something which is not that expensive. Now it's more about small group of technologists who are very fast, who can adapt, who can change, and can really provide good customer service versus a classical bank. So how do classical banks respond to this? Ideally what happened is during the first phase of development, let's say that in the fintech, what happened is banks were really resisting this. But then we had this collapse, right? They call it, I'm sorry, I'm running short of words right now. But the thing is that there was a currency issue that happened in 2010. Economies started failing. There was a lot of transparency needed. Governments, they wanted more information as to why this is happening. You know that the American economy faced a serious situation. So based on that, there was also an impact here in the Middle East, in GCC. That is where that was the first phase of fintech when they started getting into it. Now they promised better customer service, they promised a lot more accountability, and they can offer a lot of tracking. Yeah, since they are online in nature, you can really track the users. At this point in time, banks versus fintech, they were competing because banks had their own system, and fintechs, they were small, they were swift, and they can play it faster. Now we foresee that in future, it's not that the banks will take over fintech or fintechs are going to replace banks. It will be a yes. It will be a mix of the two. It will be the banks will always be there because they know the game of business finance.
It's happening.
They have very long running experience. It is not that it is a good advice to all of the fintechs, new fintechs who are either they are there or they are planning. They should not really think of competing with banks. The thing is that they have years of history. They have years of experience in the industry. They know the customers. They know their financials. They know how their behavior, macro level behavior. It's something that if you join hands together, then the industry, the consumers will benefit. They will get better service. The industry will be more profitable, and it will be good business for both of them. Now, in the GCC region, when we see GCC region has very good internet penetration, computer internet penetration. But if you look at this, you will notice that the global financial market development in GCC is not that strong. There is a huge demand for financial products customized to individual needs. Now, this is something where fintech will play roles. They will try to exploit this situation. Now, it's hard to draw conclusion if banks are taking the lead or the fintechs. It's going to be collaboration between the two. Some banks realize the potential. They have started aligning. For example, there are examples like Dubai Bank, and even in Qatar, there are banks who have set up good budgets for technological upgradation. So right now they are investing, but they are not really thinking of partnering with a technology company. That's the next phase.
HSBC, they said 250 billion last year in blockchain. They're operating in.
This is fine.
It's all happening already.
Very true. This will be. It's more about joining hands on the front. See, blockchain is basically the backend that you will have. You are going to have an interface for the customers, and you are going to design products. Now, that product development happens based on the data that you have. Now, that data is not very refined because I've been in the research industry for several years. Believe me, I was heading ICT research in Qatar. So, the thing is that you will have limited insights to your customer. But when you get into the online business, the details, the transactions which are available are huge. You can very easily segment them, you can customize the product, and it can reach a stage. It's not far away that you can really put in algorithm, which we call as artificial intelligence, right, to take care of some of the adjustments in the existing products. It can happen. It will happen, in fact. It's not inevitable. Now, these are some of the examples that have happened, like NBD in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Commercial Bank, all of these. So you can always access this presentation, or I can share them with you. Now, this is something when we talk about blockchain developers in GCC, we see that grand total is 1539. It's not a huge number versus international figures when we talk about USA or UK. And United Arab Emirates has maximum number of developers in the blockchain. Now, this is something versus Qatar, which is only 49. Now, this is time, particularly for these GCC countries, to speed it up, to set a proper incubation environment, to nurture them and to let them grow. Now, certainly, when we talk about the banks, the technological providers, we cannot really forget about regulators. Like, what should be their role? Because they are the ones who really incubate or provide the ecosystem for the players within that ecosystem. It is mainly that they should foster a culture amenable to responsible innovation. This is something which is very much highlighted in the fourth industrial revolution. That how would you control a man or a person, a developer, whether he is getting into ethical development or he is getting into hacking. It is something that it is controlled more by environment. You have to imbibe those values within a human being, and within the set of financial industry, it's the job of the regulators to take care of it. So that is why they need to be more proactive in terms of designing their policies. Leveraging upon experience of fintechs and banks, both of them one has technology experience, another one has banking experience. So if they join hands, it will be fantastic. And banking regulators should ideally facilitate this, because right now they are sitting aside. Encouraging fair access and treatment of consumers. This is something which is core responsibility of any of the financial regulators. Effective risk management and encouraging Islamic banks to integrate responsible innovation into their strategy and plans. Of course, formal outreach and communication by the regulators is very important, and collaboration with other regulators in order to learn good practices that are happening in other parts of the world. Now, these are some of the observations which is a summary of the things that I have spoken. So, if you want, I can take you through. We can stop here. Which is Bitcoin is ideally it's not really happening. It's a virtual asset. It is does not fall into the criteria of Islamic currency. The third wave of fintech will lead to collaboration between banks and fintechs. This is what is predicted. And considering the growth, regulators should ideally guide the growth of fintech. They should really bring banks and fintechs together and make them work together. That's in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I happen to be the last speaker, and I think it's time for us to start our weekend. So thank you very much for managing time and being patient. I know that we overran our schedule, but I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, please do get back to us. We will write to you with contact details of each one of us. So please, you can always consult us with your questions. If you have things, particularly the key areas which are covered right now is, of course, we have blockchain experts, we have cybersecurity, research and analytics is my area. We are all joining hands together and trying to serve the Qatari market better. So thank you very much for your time. I'll let Taras, who is...
Sure, will do. Are you on the attendee list? So you're all registered in Android? Okay, we can send it to everybody then.
Would you mind if I cover some of these, because my paper is yet to be published?
Yeah, we don't
Okay.
share.
No, I can share most of the details, except a couple of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much, Tariq. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We'll be doing more of these events, so looking forward. If you want to participate or maybe speak at some of these events, please get in touch with us. Thank you. Yeah, we had a brief chat. Yeah, perfect. Well said. Okay. That's good.
I really sorry. We had some experience. USB is NSA was right now. Yeah. We're doing mainly houses. We're mainly selling and there's a lot of projects coming. Big projects coming. So there's a lot of things to bring. Yeah, so drop me an email. Send me all send me to we do have things that we potentially can be yeah. So it's even more than enough for us. Let's be there. Yeah.
let's not use that. It's me confusing which one I need to choose. You are he. As a customer, I'm scared of what he is saying. And at the same time, this guy is saying floppy is very good. So which one I get? Suspect.